I touched on yesterday's video that we are seeing, shall we say, a almost tick list at this point of what these reform councils are doing. It's pretty much one council does this, and then almost immediately, like all the rest, pretty much decide to follow suit. The big one at the moment that they're currently all trying to be involved with is that a couple of years ago, there was a big push in like 2018, 2019 to get councils to declare a climate emergency. And this was all part of a big, wide campaign to try and get like the government at the time to do more on net zero. And it was actually quite a really good, successful campaign. Generally, it really was. Did get the national government, to move on it somewhat, although Rishi Sunak then came along, but that has now been undone by Labour. So, you know, so there you go. So there is a push we are now seeing by reform where these councils, of course, declared a climate emergency. They are now trying to overturn this, or at least get this decision undone, or remove net zero targets entirely. Because, again, doesn't fit with their agenda. And that is basically what Reform UK are about. They have an agenda, and that is what they are going to push, regardless, of course, of the consequences that getting rid of some of this stuff will be. We've seen, of course, on a couple of councils, them remove the flood defence committees in areas where there is constant threats of serious flooding, not just like, you know, now and then, but no, it's becoming an almost regular feature. So having these sort of flood defense committees became a complete no-brainer. But then along comes Reform UK and just gone, too much work. There you go, gotten rid of. A committee we don't have to go to. So we're going to see what happened recently down in Wiltshire, because Reform UK tried to overturn a net zero climate emergency declaration and, of course, get rid of the net zero targets as well. Now, this failed. So what will they do now that they failed in this one? Will they maybe try something a little bit more sneaky? Will they try something on this other end? We don't know. There's obviously a massive bone of hypocrisy, because a lot of these reform councils, even though they're throwing out all these net zero stuff, are very, very glad to be taking a lot of government money for initiatives when it comes to developing net zero things, or, green energy or industry stuff. So, there's that. But anyway, before we get more, of course, into this, please do, of course, click on the like and share button. And, of course, don't forget to click on the subscribe if you're new. And, of course, don't forget to ring the bell as well, so you get notifications of when we drop a new video. There are, of course, always the links down below, the Patreon page, the Buy Me Coffee link, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button. And, of course, as always, there's the YouTube membership down below as well. So let's crack on then into this. Coming, of course, from the Gazette and Herald from Wiltshire. So this is it. Reforms UK bid now to overturn Wiltshire's net zero target fails. And apparently, this council meeting got quite heated, apparently. So I don't know. Maybe we might try and watch this if we get a chance on stream another time. It'll be interesting to watch. So, a bid, of course, to overturn Wiltshire's net zero targets has now failed, but the vote was closer than anticipated. Again, I don't think it was, given what we'll see the motion was, but I believe it was 45 to 23 with 19 abstentions. That doesn't seem like a close vote to me, but again, I don't know. It might have been for that particular council. So At the full meeting of the Wiltshire Council last Tuesday on July the 22nd, Reform UK councillors Ed Rimmer and Chris Vaughan put forward a motion calling on the council to overturn its 2019 crisis declaration, saying this council should not be constrained by a motion demanding unachievable county-wide 2030 carbon reduction targets as set out in the climate emergency motion, and so repudiates it, said the motion. Now, here's the thing. Having an ambitious target like that, even if you don't achieve it, can actually be quite good, because that then makes you think, well, how could we achieve this by 2030? And from what I've seen, Wiltshire has actually succeeded in a lot of ways of reducing its emissions by pursuing those, being very an ambitious agenda. Now, it wouldn't have done it by 2030, but it would have been in a situation where it was a heck of a lot better. And that is what we have seen in a lot of states as well, even nationally, where sometimes you might not be on course to maybe necessarily meet it, but because it was so ambitious, plans were laid. They were laid out a lot better. They were sort of really ambitious into trying to achieve those targets. And guess what? If we don't achieve them by 2030, then you have these really ambitious initiatives that were already in place, already reducing a lot of that stuff, already reducing the carbon emissions. Why not then continue on that and be even more ambitious? Just because you set an ambitious target and don't meet it doesn't necessarily mean it's a failure. So, when of course trying to introduce the motion, Councillor Rimmer said, getting sort of red dwarf flashbacks on this. Councillor Rimmer, of course, said that the net zero target was unrealistic and should no longer shape council policy. Again, that's ridiculous. Net zero should always, I think, be involved in helping to shape council policy. He said and continued that it was time for Wiltshire to now move on from virtue signalling and focus on practical deliverable priorities. But you are asking them to get rid of these deliverable priorities. He also went on to say that net zero and the climate emergency were, of course, now being used to bypass normal scrutiny and push through ideological policies without proper debate. Let me tell you this, that never happens on councils. If you really look at things, proper debate and scrutiny always happens. Very, very much so. Public trust in politics is collapsing, and one of the reasons is because politicians keep pretending they can try and control things that they can't, he said. But we can have an input. We can't control the weather. We can't control climate change, but we can do a lot to affect it. But I wouldn't say that climate is reducing trust in people's politics, though. Defending, of course, the council's position, Councillor Paul Sample went on to say the cabinet member for the environment and climate urged members to, quote, look at the facts, not that something that has been made up by GB News or Donald Trump. He said, with the giant fans that have now been cooling the council chamber now turned off so that members could properly hear the discussion. He said the UK's now frequent heat waves were having an effect on vulnerable people, especially the elderly, which again is very much true. Increased rainfall, meanwhile, was now resulting in flash floods, again very true as well. Millions of pounds worth of damage was now being caused. Again, absolutely true. Why would you just ignore that? Councillor Richard Clever, the leader of the Conservative group, also said that he would be giving his councillors a free vote on this issue. He said there was a very difficult position, agreeing that it was, quote, not achievable to try and make the county of Wiltshire carbon neutral by 2030, despite the council's own success in reducing its own carbon emissions. Councillor Clewer, so there we go, also who abstained in the 2019 motion, said, based on what I voted last time and based on what I'm seeing here, I'm inclined to back this motion, not because I want to stop taking climate action and change, but because 2030 isn't deliverable and the council should not be constrained with it. And I think the way this is wording of this is motion, because you can get cheeky stuff like this happen where the objective is to get rid of that declaration, but it's worded in such a way that, oh, we're just getting rid of this declaration because that 2030 deadline was just too unrealistic. But away goes the entire thing if you get rid of that. They're not calling to get rid of the deadline. They're trying to get rid of the whole thing. So motions should always be read very, very carefully and looked at the implication of what is being put forward in that motion. So during the discussion, battle lines were, of course, very clearly drawn, with Councillor Chris Brogadim from Reform UK saying, "Have you ever really questioned the climate change dialogue, recalling the 1976 heat wave and suggesting that CO2 is an important gas because it helps plants grow?" That is insane. That is insane. But there you go. That's just, climate denialism. Councillor, of course, Philip Whitehead from the Conservatives said, "I'm, of course, quite happy in this heat. I'm quite happy to have it like this every time because it's better." Yeah, better for you, not for everyone else. Because that has a huge impact on elderly, on vulnerable people, on farming as well, on the weather. Can help promote flash floods. Recently the weather been having very recently, that's flash flood territory because guess what? The ground has been hardened by the sun. If you get a sun downpour like we've been having a couple of times, the water doesn't seep into the ground, it runs off. Where's that running off to? you know? So yeah, it might be better for him, not for everyone else. Councillor Sam Pierce Sam Pierce Kenny, who is the portfolio holder for young people, said, "Every single time I attend a youth council or speak to young people, two issues come up again and again: climate change and mental health. These two issues are now deeply connected." Councillor Taylor Wright from the Lib Dems also read a statement from a farmer saying, "You have no idea what it is like to watch the weather undo months of hard work. Farming used to be tough, and now it feels near impossible." Again, very true as well. Climate change having a big impact on farming. And, Reform like to bang on about how they're supporting farmers. Doing climate change stuff, supporting net zero, making that that transition will help farmers. Anyway, Councillor, of course, Phil Chamberlain from Lib Dems also said, read another statement from his ward predecessor, Brian Matthew, who is now an MP, who originally put forward the climate emergency notion back in 2019, said it was a debate now of fundamental importance for the country. Those who oppose the work that Wiltshire Council has now done since tackling the climate emergency would do well to look at the acceleration now of these weather events, both at home and across the globe. Bring the debate to a close, Councillor Sapple said, "We now have a duty to act on climate change." The motion was defeated by 45 to 23 votes with 19 abstentions. So I wouldn't say it was close, but apparently things got rather heated, shall we say, in this debate. Like I say, maybe we'll look it up and watch it on stream sometime. But apparently, it got quite heated. So yeah, something to watch out for is that they are trying to remove these climate emergencies. We've seen this before elsewhere, and this motion to me was worded in such a way of, well, we want to get rid of the climate emergency declaration, but also, that timeline of 2030. Oh, that's the real problem. That's what we're trying to get rid of. Not this, we don't take climate seriously or anything like that. No, we'll still do things with net zero and the environment. But again, you've got to be really careful with motion because how they are worded and how they do stuff can matter a lot. And to me, that motion was worded in such a way that it was designed to get rid of that declaration. And that is what we've seen from a lot of reform councils trying to get rid of these declarations. And again, this was a big, big movement a couple of years ago, as I said, back in like 2019 when that was passed, to get councils to do this type of declaration. And that did have an impact on national government. going forward as well. So bear in mind what they are trying to undo. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.